It's time for the Ward Scott Files, hosted by John Martin. Join the Salty Dog and his captain, Ted Yoho. Search for the Ward Scott Files on Facebook, Vimeo, and over 30 audio platforms, including Apple and Spotify. Now here's your host, the Salty Dog, John Martin.
Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to mine and Ted Yoho's Pirate Podcast with your host, the old Salty Dog, John Martin, and our captain of our pirate ship, Mr. Ted Yoho, who is back, not only back here on the show, but back in the United States of America. Ted, how are you, my friend?
John, I'm doing great. I appreciate that, and it is good to be back in the good old U.S. of A. After leaving Europe, we had a fantastic trip over there for 2.5 weeks. Carolyn and I, as you know, we were on our 50th anniversary and something we wanted to do. But the interesting thing is we traveled through a lot of those Eastern Bloc countries that were under the Soviet Union. And I tell you what, you can appreciate America so much more when you see what they went through and what they're going through today. I mean, there's remnants of communism everywhere over there. And people are happy to be out of it.
No vampires, no werewolves or anything like that, right?
No, but I tell you what, we wanted to go up to the Dracula Castle, but it was too far away, and we just didn't have the time. We'll have to go back. But their language over there is so strong. I mean, it could have been what was that guy's name that played Count Dracula?
Bela Lugosi.
Bela Lugosi. They all talked like him. I want to show you my house. You know, it was really great. The food was great. Great cruise.
Well, I'm glad you're back. We missed you, man, and we did remote as best we could, but we had a few challenges, but it just what makes life interesting. We'll talk about something interesting. You know, it kind of fits in with something we've been talking about for a while, and that's this battle that's going on in the Democratic Party, if you will, or this self-analyzation, whatever they're trying to do. And there's an interesting article in the Rolling Stone that kind of comes off of a piece in the New York Times. And I'm just going to read you the headline and we'll get into it. It says here, can Dems save themselves by spending $20 million on speaking with American men? What this is about, Ted, and our audience, is that there's a group of Democrats that are looking to recapture the male vote, especially younger males, and they're willing to spend $20 million trying to figure out how to get the men to vote for the Democratic Party. What are your initial thoughts on that?
You know, it's lunacy. It goes back to the basics. You know, you are who you are, accept it, move on, deal with life. And they're trying to redefine these things. And, you know, it just shows their confusion of leadership if they have to spend $20 million on how do you relate with men? Why don't you pick up a fishing pole, go out and go fishing, or you know, go shoot some clay pigeons or something like that. Do something. Go to a NASCAR event. You know, drink a beer with somebody. Don't do like Elizabeth Warren and say, "I'm here in my kitchen drinking this here beer," you know, and trying to be phony. It's just going out relating to people, and you know, praise God that they're that confused, and I hope they stay that way because we don't need them in government running this country. I mean, they can't even run their own genders.
Yeah, I tell you what, one of the things that just kind of popped in my head while you were talking is maybe in order to get men back, maybe they should actually defend women. You ever thought about that? Because
hey, that's a great point.
I mean, if you look at the people who are like sports figures who are coming out and speaking up for women, a good chunk of them are men. A lot. I mean, there are some courageous women like Riley Gaines and others, but in general, the silence from women, especially on the left, has been just deafening. Men have actually spoken up louder for women than the women have.
They really have. And I mean, we're seeing a lot more of that for sure. You know, but you go back to the whole wokeism and the he said or he, she, they, how they identify. I mean, that's just confusion that goes beyond common sense. And then you have people like that Dylan Mulvaney, Budweiser, who is still reeling from trying to put transgender out there and being a tough whatever that person is. It's a guy, I mean, I know that's not politically correct, but they're pushing the envelope in an area that nobody wants to hear it. They don't want what the product they're selling. And ask Budweiser how well that worked for them. And we're just seeing that over and over again. And like you said, who's the swimmer, the Thomas guy who wants to be
Leah or whatever? Leah. That's what his female name is.
And, he's the one that unseated Riley Gaines. And that should never have happened. And so the left is pushing this. And so they might want to just look internally and say, you know what, we really screwed up. Let's correct this and let's get back to the basics.
Well, now they've got this thing happening literally out in California as we're speaking. They're getting ready to have these high school state track championships, and they've got this one transgender athlete that's been dominating, and now they've come up with this compromise that is just ridiculous to me. But it says that essentially, let's just say you're going to take the top 3 people qualified to go to the state level for the championship. If one of those top 3 is a transgender, a man, then they take the top 4 and vice versa. But they still go, and they still, so if the male athlete dominated at the lower levels, they're going to dominate at the top. And I just don't understand how, and there are a few courageous people out there speaking up against it, even out in California. But it's just, they want to, I'm stuttering on this only because it just baffles me how they don't see this, that men want to see women competing in women's sports, that kind of thing. They defend them. So one way to get men back might be to actually defend real women.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great point, and just say, have a women's sports, men's sports, and have another classification, other. And, let the populace decide how many people are going to show up at the other sporting events. Probably very few. It'll go away. And this is a fad. This is something that's going on. It'll go away. And let's hope it goes sooner than later.
Yeah. And so back to this article, if you're just tuning in, we're talking about the Democratic leaders. Some leaders in that party are looking to spend $20 million trying to figure out how to get men to pay attention to the Democratic Party. And I want to read another snippet from this article because I think it's very telling. This is from the Rolling Stone article. It says the Democratic Party elite have been pitching plans and a multi-million-dollar ideas for how to win back young male voters, many of whom spurned Democrats last fall. The thing that stands out to me about that is they're talking about they need to craft the message. You never hear the Democrats talk about a policy. If you're looking like, for instance, to use Donald Trump, who is, the red-handed Cheeto bandit Satan guy that they all want to say, he's a combination of the redhead Cheeto bandit, Hitler, and whatever all together.
Right.
Well, if you look at Donald Trump, it's not his message that aggravates the Democrats. It's actually the policies. The policies are what he's implementing that is the reason why, because there's a lot of people that voted for Donald Trump that don't necessarily like the man individually. Sure. That's fairly clear. I hear it. I'm sure you hear it, but they love the policies. And I want to because they talk about the message, I want to play you a short video that shows about abolishing ICE. Check this out. Check this video out.
If it seems like ICE and immigration policy in general is in the news just about every day, you're right. Abolish ICE. But the latest ICE protest, this time in the shadows of City Hall Friday evening, did not stop at a call for change in U.S. immigration policy. These protesters, organized by the Democratic Socialist Party, want to abolish ICE altogether.
So today we're going to be marching with the following demands. 1, complete abolition of immigration and customs enforcement in our prison industrial complex.
The Abolish ICE movement is certainly picking up steam. Senator Kirsten Gillibrand of New York is among a growing number of mainstream elected officials now supporting the idea of getting rid of the agency created in the aftermath of the September 11th attacks.
Now, there they are talking about open borders, abolishing ICE, all these things. And here's the kicker, and I know you already know the answer to this, Ted, but I'll ask our audience. When do you think this video was shot? Was it last week, a couple days ago, yesterday? It was 6 years ago. This was 6 years ago, Ted, that this video I just played was shot. And so the message is what now? Because it's exactly the same today. It's insane.
Yeah, you know, it's Groundhog Days for them, and let's hope they never wake up and they keep promoting that message. The whole thing about getting rid of ICE, you know, we wouldn't have to have ICE if there was law and order at our border, if we had normalized immigration, and we do. We have the laws on the book. It's just enforcing those. But you go back to presidents of the past, Truman, Eisenhower, Reagan, they did mass deportations. Unfortunately, Reagan allowed a lot of people in here. Actually, it was Carter with the Mario boat lifts. And then he went on to naturalize, I think it was 6 million people. They got citizenship here, 4 to 6 million. And, you know, if we didn't have the influx of people under Obama and under Biden, we wouldn't need ICE. And, you know, it all goes back to the rule of law. So they create a problem. You get this influx, Republicans come in, try to enforce stuff, and they need more help. So they get another agency, ICE up, Immigration, Customs and Enforcement. And so they're trying to fix the problem that the Democrats created. And, you know, we need to keep all this in perspective of the 5 major things that are really affecting this country. It's our debt, it's China, it's energy, education, healthcare. Those kind of things are what we really need to do. And this ties into the immigration. You got too many people here that are here illegally. I don't know if you heard about the case the other day. There was a lady, 2 people on a jet ski that ran into a kayaker in Texas, killed the person on the kayak, 18-year-old. The lady driving the jet ski was here illegally. She goes to the dock. The person on the jet ski with her says, "We got to go back and help that person." The lady goes, "I'm out of here." So she grabs her boyfriend. They leave. He's illegally. They have 2 hit and runs. And, you know, that's why we need an ICE. And that's why you got to have a rule of law.
And the young lady that you're talking about that was killed was in line to go to the Air Force Academy. I don't know if you heard that or not. I mean, it's just a tragic loss. And they always talk about that crimes that prevented, and they say, oh, well, immigrants don't commit, you know, and they throw out these statistics and all that. But to me, all of that is totally irrelevant, because if there's one crime that could be prevented, it would be for a crime committed by an illegal alien, because they shouldn't be here. And I don't know if you've ever met this lady. Her name is Sabine Durden. She was on my former show a few years ago, and she's one of those angel moms. Her son, who was just kind of like the same thing like this young lady, just on his way, wanting to be a police officer, all that stuff. And he was killed by a drunk hit and run driver who had 3 or 4 DUIs, had been deported a dozen times and back. This was about 5 or 6 years ago. And, you know, how do you tell that mom? And she was a legal alien from Germany, but she lost her son to a drunk driver. And you see this all the time. It literally happens in our region here all the time. But we just played that video from 6 years ago. And my point on that, Ted, was, you know, the message never really changes. Check this out. A fundraising email was just sent this week from your good pal, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. This is what it said in the email, and this is a fundraising email. She said, "I believe that ICE, an agency that was just formed in 2003 during the Patriot Act era, is a rogue agency that should not exist. Should not exist." And they wonder why Donald Trump got elected. I mean, this was a big issue for him, and they're saying this agency shouldn't exist. It's insane.
It is insane. And I remember when she first got elected, she was down there. This was the same thing she was saying, however long she's been in Congress, probably 8 years now, 10 years. And God bless her. Keep singing that. Keep singing that. You know, you're talking about the person that you know, Durden, that lost their son. I had a guy come into my office. He's from Mexico. And I don't know if I talked to you about this, but he was married to a woman here. They had kids, and he was under deportation because he'd come into the country 3 or 4 times. illegally had gotten caught, gotten deported. He's back in, he's working in one of the trades. They're in my office pleading to intervene to keep him here. And I had some contractors call me, so this is a good guy. So I interview him. They tell me their history. You know, he had a DUI and he got tied up with an uncle in Colorado who somebody in that group that he was with was selling cocaine. So he got busted and deported. He came back in illegally. So I go to bat for him with Department of Homeland Security and Immigration. And they called me up. DHS called me. Immigration Enforcement called me up. And they said, do you know the record of this guy? And I said, well, yeah, what he told me. He goes, no, that's just the iceberg. That's the tip of the iceberg. They went through and he had probably 15, 20 things against him. I called him up. He came into the office and I says, how come you didn't tell me about this stuff? I said, I go to bat for you as a congressman. I lose my credibility and you held this out. Well, we didn't think it was important. I says, and I think he had like 3 or 4 DUIs. I says, you're the kind of people, you're the kind of person I'm trying to keep out of this country. I said, don't ever come back to my office. Anyways, it's just, it drives you crazy. It is, because I wanted to prevent what happened in these other incidences.
Yeah, well, you know, DUI is certainly something that's kind of in my wheelhouse. I've talked about this openly before. I've had a few myself because I had some real serious drug and alcohol problems.
Sure.
And I've been clean and sober since March of '88 and tried to, you know, use my experience to help others. But I used to tell people when I worked at the drug treatment center, you know, I mean, if you want to drink and do drugs and all, you're hurting. But when you get in the vehicle, a DUI, you are risking my family and everything. You're telling me that your drinking, your drugging, whatever, is more important than my family.
Right.
And that I draw the line on. I have zero sympathy for DUI, and this is someone who has had them myself, because DUI is a killer. It absolutely is. So I just want to put that out there for people.
I think you're right. You're right. I know you're right.
Back to this article, this $20 million effort. Here's some more words from the article. The new plan, $20 million effort to study the syntax, language, and content that gains attention and virality, it's going viral on the internet, the word, in male-dominated spaces online, such as video games. So they're going to interrupt these young men's video games with some type of political message. Boy, I'll tell you what, that should really work for them. So here you're playing your video game, and all of a sudden a political message comes on there. That's certainly going to draw them in, don't you think, Ted?
Yeah, to our party.
It's crazy.
It really is. You know, and again, they're just off message. They're floundering. They're backed into a corner, and they don't know what to do. They don't have a national leader, and it's because they don't have a message. If they would focus on the nation, what is best for America, they would bring people together. But they keep dividing it, and you know, let's just keep promoting Bernie Sanders and AOC. Let's get rid of ICE. Let them talk about getting rid of ICE, you know, and, you know, people want to move on. People want security. They want an income, and they want a better life for their kids. And their party is not doing that.
Well, interesting you should say that, because I don't know if you've seen this, but some new polling just came out and basically said for the first time in like forever, 50% of the American people actually think across the board that America is on the right track. Imagine that. 50%. And that sounds like, wow, only 50%. Yeah, but normally it's like below 40. And
well, you look at the confusion that's going on with the Trump administration. They've only been in there 4 months. Look at the rapid changes he's done on the tariffs, on immigration, you know, on our foreign policy. He's disrupted the whole status quo of what's been going on for the last 60 years, and it needed to be disrupted. And, you know, once the dust starts settling, those numbers are going to go up. People are saying, yeah, we are moving into that golden age of America. And that's where we need to go. And then you're going to start projecting of where we're going to go on education, things like that, and to make this country stronger. You look at our energy prices now. Their oil's down to $60 or $65 a barrel, and things are coming down. And when that comes down, inflation goes down, and prices will come down, and it's a good thing. This is a good move.
Yeah. So talking about video games and all that, a guy that's been in the news a lot lately, not too many people are watching him on his show, Jake Tapper, but he was just interviewed and he's talking about this book that he's got out. But I wanted to play this quick snippet because they were asking him about how to reach out to young men. And I think it's really interesting what Jake Tapper said here. So let's play this video and we'll come back and talk about it.
My son is now 15 years old, and he's a gamer. He's a football fan, starting linebacker on his varsity football team. The Democratic Party has no way of communicating with him. They have no entree into his world.
That's good. I mean, the Dems have no idea how to communicate with a 50-year-old.
And thanks to the Greg Gutfeld show for that particular snippet there. But there's Jake Tapper telling you that he's got a teenage son and that the Democratic Party has no way to contact that dude at all. And maybe, I guess, an advertisement in the middle of his game. But I thought that was really interesting coming from the likes of Jake Tapper.
It is, and especially after Jake Tapper covered up Joe Biden and was in that, what do they call it, Biden Gate. But you go back to how Trump related to young people. And he took credits, Barron Trump, with getting him on some of these podcasts that young people listen to. And they went viral. And he gained so much support by relating to people, not shaming them and saying, what you should do and how you should talk and use the proper pronouns and all that. He just related to people. And that's an amazing thing for somebody that's as successful as he is, to be able to relate to, the average person. And that's why people like him so much. He's got that fight in him.
Absolutely. Well, speaking of fight, I want to play something because they talk about that they need to get something that goes viral, basically,
Sure.
To get them. And so I wanted to play a video here that might actually appeal to men and really patriotic Americans all the time. Let's play this quick
That's
video.
why I gave you that segue.
Yeah, that's why you're the captain of the ship, sir.
I got you, sir. Let me get my shoes, sir. Hold that in your head, it's bloody. So we gotta move to the bus. Let me get my shoes. Okay, my shoes down, sir. Watch out. Wait.
I mean, that fight. You talking about something that if they want to get what I'd call real men, that kind of thing, there you go. And that was not orchestrated or anything. That was Donald Trump being genuine. I mean, to think that you came within an inch of literally a millimeter of losing your life and you react that way, I don't think you can plant. That's just who you are. I mean, that to me shows as much about who Trump is literally under fire.
Yeah, no, it really is. And I for him to come up and do that, I mean, that was just, like you said, that was the thing that people, they look up to that. They want to be inspired by a leader like that. And he's doing that. Then you can contrast it with Joe Biden. Number one, if they would have shot Joe, I don't know if he would have bled. He's got so much plastic on him. But he probably wouldn't even have known it. And they would have whisked him off. You never would have heard from him again. And, Trump is somebody we've never seen before. I would liken him probably with Theodore Roosevelt. That guy was a fighter. I mean, he didn't stay quiet. He was controversial, but by God, people loved him, and he moved this country forward.
Absolutely. Well, back to this article, and we'll close out with this right here. The point of the project, it says, is to listen to a cohort of young people who don't feel like the Democratic Party hears them or cares about them. And, I'm thinking about a different group of people, and maybe they just care about different men. And I was thinking about that picture. I don't know if we'll be able to pull it up, with two members of Trump's cabinet inner circle. I mean,
no,
my
that's
God.
Biden's inner circle.
Yeah, I mean Biden. Excuse me,
Yeah.
I had a senior moment. Thinking about Biden got my mind messed up. But anyway, so I don't know if we got that picture pulled up, but
They make a lovely couple. That's representing America in foreign policy there now.
there you go. There you go. There's the men that the Biden administration and the Democrats were trying to reach out to. But you know, Ted, I'm always trying to help, and I always try to do things that maybe it wouldn't be appropriate for the captain to say, but maybe that if I'm going to try to save the Democrat Party $20 million. How about two simple things? Just put out the fact that men cannot have babies. They can't, that picture of Pete Buttigieg nursing the baby, that stuff don't work. Men can't have babies, and no chicks with what? I'll leave it. Chicks don't have, and you fill in the blank, people.
Have that private part. Well, you know
maybe
what?
Then they want to cut them off, so who knows?
Yeah.
I'm just trying to help, Ted.
Well, all you got to do is show that picture and just say, I don't understand why the Democratic men can't relate to that.
I hear you.
Yeah.
I'm sure we'll have this ongoing conversation because the Democrats, they just are in a mess, but do not take them lightly. I always want to say that.
No, you can't.
Well, we're going to take a quick commercial break.
Absolutely.
We appreciate you sponsoring our show. If you'd like to be a sponsor, look at the little tab that says Contact Freddie and call that number, and we'll be right back.
We'll be right back.
Although the owner of Lewis Oil Company maintains she is 29, Lewis Oil turns 60 years old in June. Chevron would like to recognize the North Florida second-generation family-owned business, celebrating its growth and staying power. Lewis Oil Company maintains significant on-hand supplies, strategically located fuel depots, a delivery fleet, on-site service, fuel card locks, and convenience stores. Lewis Oil Company understands its responsibility in the local economy by providing service and delivery on demand and in crisis. As a first responder for 18 Florida counties and the Southeast from Texas to Virginia, we are proud of this rare accomplishment. Lewis Oil delivers.
This is Ward Scott, and I want to thank all our sponsors who keep the show going and pay the bills. The Ward Scott Files premium sponsors are Crime Prevention Security Systems, large enough to serve you, small enough to care.
Meldon Law, the only official injury partner of the Florida Gators.
The Ward Scott Files Gold sponsors are Lewis Oil Company,
Shoot GTR,
On the Spot Dry Cleaners, R&R Construction, and Style Cuts. If you are interested in promoting your business on the show, you can visit our website, www.wardscottfiles.com, and click on the Advertise Here banner on the right side of the page, or call my friend Freddie at 352-284-3733. Again, thank you to all the great businesses that support the Ward Scott Files. And remember, if you like the show, thank our sponsors and support the businesses that support us.
What you just said is one of the most insanely idiotic things I have ever heard. Everyone in this room is now dumber for having listened to it. May God have mercy on your soul.
Ward, that very much surprises me that you've never been tased.
You can't handle the truth.
All bees poop.
A warthog. He's going to come up the steps. Here he comes. Oh my goodness, and he's huge. Hello, boy. Wonder if we can pet him. Hi, boy.
Can we touch him? No, don't.
Help me! Help! Help!
And we're back. We appreciate our sponsors and appreciate if you'd like to become one. And everybody who's listening to the show, we just really appreciate you guys so much.
We sure do.
The next article we want to talk a little bit about is a story about Elon Musk. Elon Musk is leaving D.C. from his formal position as a government consultant, I guess is what it's called. but he's leaving the Doge program and going back to private life. I guess he's taking his chainsaw with him.
Yeah.
But Elon shared, Ted, a post on X saying, "As my scheduled time as special government employee," that's what I was trying to think of, "comes to an end, I would like to thank President @real Donald Trump for the opportunity to reduce wasteful spending." What are your thoughts overall on him leaving and Mr. Musk in general, sir?
I think it's a good thing. There was so much controversy around him, and it was an attack on him not being elected. He's a Nazi, Trump's a Nazi, and all this, that you're losing the message on what they were doing. Our government is $37 trillion in debt. It's unsustainable. $3.2 trillion or billion dollars a day just in interest. Something has to change. And so instead of focusing on where we are as a nation and the changes that need to happen, it was all about Musk and Trump and, all the circus that the media brought onto them, instead of putting on the focus on, we have to make these drastic changes. If we don't make these drastic changes, this country's over. And you and I have talked about that person we know really well that's been in 3 countries where the currency went to zero overnight. Of course, it didn't happen overnight, but the government woke up, says your currency's, it's gone. And that'll happen in this country if we don't have these drastic things. So with Elon Musk, I think he did a great service to the country. The dust will settle. We will come out of this stronger, but you can't give up. We have got to keep reforming these programs. You're not going to cut your way out of that debt. You got to grow your economy and make the necessary reforms that we need to. There is too much waste, fraud, and abuse. Speaking about that, that case up in Minnesota? It was a person from one of the Middle East countries, and they were in a program in charge in Minnesota, in the Minneapolis area, for Feed the Future, and it was a government grant base, and they got $200-some million that were in fraud in this program. And this one lady in Minnesota was getting ready to get on a plane to get out of the country, and they caught her. She alone has over $1.8 million in fraud that went to her for Feed the Future in Minnesota, and she only spent $2,000 or $3,000 on food. So that's waste and fraud and abuse that these people are going after. The Doge team was going after, and the media and the left want to criticize him, but yet what he was doing was great. And it was a disservice to him. And he took a big hit politically and, financially, but he'll come back.
Yeah, well, and I heard a little bit about that case, but all you really need to know is they gave $2 billion to Stacey Abrams. $2 billion with a B dollars to Stacey Abrams to teach people how to be more efficient with appliances or something. That tells you. I mean, Stacey.
Well, it's like that the money they threw at the EPA, I forget how many billions of dollars, but it was done in like the last couple of weeks of the Biden administration. I'm going to say it was like $72 billion or $27 billion, and it was just money thrown out there that there was no program for. And so
they just busted, I think, a whole group of people out in, I think they were Armenian, actually.
Yeah.
Some of them were citizens and some were out in LA and somewhere in California just this past week for a $30 million loans to fictitious businesses for COVID. So, I mean, the way they were, I don't think we'll ever know. It's probably $1 trillion if you really want to know, when you come right down to it. It was literally stolen in the last 4 years.
Well, go back to what this segment is on, about Elon Musk going after the waste, fraud, and abuse. This is the kind of stuff he was doing that the media should have applauded him and informed and educated the American people. But we know how the media is. They are anti-Trump, anti-anything the Republicans are doing, and they want to make it sound bad. But in essence, it was what this country needs, and there needs to be a lot more of that. And, that's why shows like ours, where we're talking about this stuff, putting the emphasis where it should be, why these things are going on, instead of the media, the legacy media, bashing this and confusing people. They're telling you a lie. This is the truth. So, fulfills our mandate. Educate, motivate, and activate.
Absolutely. Well, Mr. Musk went on to say in his X, I don't know if you call them tweets anymore, that he said at Doge mission will only strengthen over time as it becomes a way of life throughout the government. And I say this, one can only hope that he's right about that, because, you know, the one thing that I have been critical of Mr. Trump, and I show him over my shoulder there, I don't criticize him a lot. One, as I agree with him most of the time, and two, he gets enough without me adding on. But if by the end of his term, we haven't got back to some type of regular order in Congress doing a normal budget process, I'm going to be very disappointed, period.
Well, you know, this goes back, I'm going to interrupt here. This goes back to us, the citizens, excuse me, holding our elected officials accountable. If they show up at a town hall meeting, which those are being thrown to the wayside because of the violence and being taken over by the Democratic Party. But hold those elected officials accountable. Go to their office, call them up. They work for you. You know, they're not at a higher level. They just have a position that we put them in, and they're public servants. And if they don't respond to you, and if you can't have a conversation with them, vote them out of office. They don't own that position. We own it, the American people.
Yeah, well, you mentioned that about the town halls, and it just kind of occurred to me because people say, "Oh, well, it's overblown," and most town halls, they have probably, even the people that come to protest and all, you know, is a more of an irritant than anything else. But keep this in mind: when you lionize a guy that guns down a CEO, shoots him in the back, and make that dude a hero and raise $2 million or more for him, that puts a little thought. When you fly down to El Salvador to lobby for an MS-13 gang member that his own wife said he beat her up and drug her down the street. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. When you talk about these Palestinian protest people, like from Harvard and all, and these two young people that just got gunned down a couple of weeks ago, if I were a congressperson and I was seeing these types of people come to my town hall, you darn right I would take the threat seriously, because these people are being, the flames are being fanned by these people.
They really are, John. And that's, you know, we were doing the town halls, but you remember when we went to the Tesla dealership for that demonstration?
Absolutely.
We were getting that kind of response from our town halls, that negative side. All they wanted to do was yell at us. And we would do, sometimes we did 4 in a day town halls. That group went to every town hall we did. And it just got to where it was unproductive, and the threats were there. And I think I've shared with you, when I got out of Congress, it was a year ago this past December, I got a death threat. Me and my family, I reported it. It was a restricted number. They tracked the guy down in Washington State. He got arraigned. He's in Jacksonville. His sentencing is month of June. And they asked me if I wanted to go there. These things are real, and they happen all the time. And I've been out of Congress for 3 years at the time, and they're still coming in. And so it's a heck of a thing that you're trying to represent the people and do what's right. And if people focused on their district and did that instead of raising all this money, they would be a lot better off, and they would be a lot more productive, in my opinion. But that gets off. I'm off track here.
That's okay.
Go back.
So
Musk
went on to say, Ted, I thought this was pretty fascinating. He's talking about the big, beautiful bill. He said, "I was disappointed to see the massive spending bill, frankly, which increases the budget deficit and undermines the work that Doge team is doing." And he's got a point there, no doubt.
Absolutely. Well, that's why Thomas Massey and Warren Davidson voted against it. I know those guys really well, and I agree with them. But you're not going to cut everything out immediately. This should be over a time period. And as you and I have talked about, unfortunately, that time period is about 1.5 years to 2 years in a Congress, because the party could switch. And then you have a whole nother agenda you have to follow. But it should be set up. And this is where we need leaders that don't serve a political party, a Republican, a Democrat, conservative, liberal, whatever. They need to serve America. And if America is weak, if America is divided, we are in jeopardy. And so we need leaders that are going to put America first, not a party. and say, this is the way we need to do. These are the problems we need to solve. And that's what Doge was trying to do. And I agree with him. That wasn't a perfect bill, but I've not ever seen a perfect bill other than one we put in that got created the Development Finance Corporation. Anyways, never mind.
Well, Ted, while you were talking, it made we've kind of said this before, but I just want to keep reiterating it. To all the people that voted for Donald Trump this last time, if you and I was one of them, and I hold myself to this same level, we cannot just go home and think that it's over.
Right.
We have got to stay through. And I'm not just saying blindly follow anybody. Get involved. If you think somebody needs to be primary, whatever you want to do, that's up to you. But we have, the American people, if we're ever going to solve this deficit issue, it's going to be up to us. Because if we simply think we can just turn it over to Congress and whoever the president happens to be, and it's just going to magically take care of itself, that's exactly how we got here. We cannot, a republic cannot survive without active participants in that republic, period.
A well-informed active participant. And you have to be educated and know what's going on and know what the shackles that restrain the federal government, what they are. And when they go beyond that, we need to pull them back in. And that's our responsibility, because they're not going to hold themselves responsible. And that's where, people talk about term limits, and, I ran on term limits and honored those. But we have in our hands the ability to term limit anybody in the federal government that we elect, other than the Supreme Court justices. But we can do that by electing a president that'll put the right people on there that will protect the values of this country that it was founded on. So we ultimately, the citizens, have the power of term limits in our hand. And I think we need to exercise that a heck of a lot more.
Yeah, my old daddy used to say something that I've come to realize is true. He used to say, we get the government we deserve.
Absolutely.
Because what he was talking about is the people voting for that. That's what he was talking about. And we need to keep that in mind. But President Trump has announced that him and Elon are going to have an Oval Office meeting today at 1:30 Eastern time. That should be
I might just turn the TV on during the day, which I never do, and watch that.
The bottom line, Ted, and I think you'll agree with me, but I just want to say thank you to Elon Musk. He's not a perfect man, but I tell you what, for him to put aside all that he had going, and is he going to be rewarded for this? Probably. I mean, he's got the only business that can build something like the Iron Dome and stuff like that. I mean, but to do what he did, to put himself out there, to take all the heat that he's done when he didn't have to do any of that and could have lived the life that most of us can't even dream about, I just have to say thank you.
Absolutely. And John, that's the kind of the trait of a public servant. They went in there for the right reason. He didn't go in there for fame or money. He already had all that. He put everything on the line for this. And Trump did the same thing. I remember being in a meeting with him. He goes, I don't need this crap. He goes, I'm pretty well off. He goes, but I want to do this. And that's the kind of people. I look back at the Speaker of the House where people were like, well, let's ask this person to be the Speaker of the House. And I'm like Paul Ryan, he didn't want to be the Speaker of the House. I'm like, well, why are you asking? If the guy doesn't want it, why are you trying to convince him against his will? It's that saying, a man convinced against his will is of the same opinion still. I'll let that sink in for a minute.
Well, I was thinking about this earlier, Ted, but then you mentioned Donald Trump and it just kind of hit me. There's three big figures that the Democrats hate and used to love and stuff like that. One of them is Elon Musk. They loved him. Sure. And hung out with him and wanted him, and now they hate him. Donald Trump falls into that same category.
He sure does.
I mean, the Democrats love that guy. He was not racist, none of these kind of stuff. Athletes flock to him. They still do to a certain extent. And another guy, and this is what made me think about it, because the Democrats are trying to get their own Joe Rogan, they say. We need to get a Joe Rogan. They're willing to spend millions of bucks. I thought about it. Maybe I should just flip my script and become the Democrats' Joe Rogan and make money. What the heck?
I get paid.
Yeah, I could, you're closer there to me. But Joe Rogan said something that applies to all three of these guys, Trump, Musk, and Rogan. He said, they had me, but they basically blew it. They went away from him, not the other way around. And I just think that's interesting if you think about that statement, because you could say the same thing about Musk. You could say the same thing about Donald Trump. The Democrats essentially had them, but they blew it.
All right. Now,
God, they did, I guess.
I don't know if Rogan's a billionaire, but Trump and Musk are, so they're oligarchs.
Yeah.
But it was okay when they're on their side. Now that they're over here, it's the oligarchs. We got to get rid of the oligarchs. I think I shared with you when I was in Europe. Everything that was built that is lasting today were built by the oligarchs of their time. Those are the ones that built those buildings and the castles and all that. And we can argue, or people say, they used captured people and slaves and all that. Yeah, they probably did, but that was what they did in those times. But the point is, those are the people that did the ruling. Those are the people that eventually moved into the Vanderbilts, the Carnegies, the Rockefellers, that created an empire of their own, but they also created a lot of good for this country that we're benefiting from today. So, I'm just thankful for the system we have in this country, because it's unlike any other system in any other country. And speaking to those people that were from the countries like Serbia and Croatia and the recently out of communism, 100% of them, communism's bad. And as we talked about before, the new Socialist Democratic Party, or Democrat Socialist Party, their goal is socialism. Every communist is a socialist until they reach socialism, they become communists. I don't want to go there.
Well, you're talking about that just made me think of another headline that was in the news this week.
I feel like I'm just slapping you.
That's why you're the captain of the ship, man. Just don't be Ahab and Moby Dick or whatever.
Yeah,
but
right.
I watched that again the other night. But the Democrats came up with this idea of a shadow kind of committee of people, non-elected people that need to guide them. And like Jon Stewart, I think Letitia James was on. They had all these different people, Pete Buttigieg. And I'm thinking about it. Isn't that the very definition of fascist? When you have an elite group of people like a committee that decide for everyone that aren't elected? Isn't that real? Because they say, Trump's a fascist. He's a fascist. He's a Nazi. He's a fascist. He's all this. But then they come up with these plans that are the very definition of fascism. Or am I missing something?
No, you're right on. Two things. The Democrats always accuse us of doing what they're doing. That's number one. Number two, they already did that, John. They did that with Joe Biden.
We just had a committee, right?
Yeah, they had a committee running this country, and they're going to investigate who it was. I can tell you who it was. It was Barack Obama. It was the Clintons. It was Susan Rice. It was the 17 heads of the intelligence agencies. It was James Comey, John Brenner, Clapper. And, that's your committee that was running this country and destroying this country, because they believe in that one world order, the World Economic Forum. They don't want a strong nationalist United States of America that disrupts their plan.
That's absolutely true. Well, another story that's got breaking news, and it literally is fluid, because 1 minute the tariffs were off because of some kind of judge ruling a lower level. It's not even a circuit court. But now they're back on again because there was a temporary injunction saying they can't do it. It's just chaotic, man. And somehow this whole judge thing has got to be resolved. And you're a good student of American history. Do you really believe that? Because I believe in the three, co-branches of government. But was it intended to have all of these lower circuits disrupt all of this stuff? Because if it was, it's just not functioning right.
You're right. You're absolutely right. The three branches, and that was one of the reasons I went, because the three branches were out of balance. You've got the legislative, the executive, and the judiciary. By design, the judiciary was to give opinions only. It was the weakest branch of government. But through the courts and through the years and through not paying attention, they become one of probably the strongest branch. because they can hold everybody else in check, but they're not supposed to do that. They're supposed to render opinions, not law, not to legislate from the bench. And this is what they've done. And John, this is what happened with the administrative states. When Congress allowed the administrative states, your agencies under the president, the EPAs, all these IRS, all these things, to be able to start making rules that bypass Congress, and then they could implement those rules and enact them. They could put the fines in there, they could collect the fines, and they became autonomous. And this got overturned in the Chevron deference case. And if people in Congress don't put in legislation to say what an agency shall do and what they may not do, this will morph back into the way it was. And this is something that needs to change, and that we need to put the emphasis on our legislators to protect these things so we don't fall back into that. But to go back to these things on these tariffs and the trade, again, this is something Trump is doing. It needed to be done. We had such a trade imbalance that we've never had at this height that it needed to be adjusted. And we knew they were going to be challenged in court, and we're seeing it going on right now.
Yeah, I just don't think we can continue to go on somewhere. One thing about the Trump administration, whether people agree with them or not, I think ultimately all of this going to the Supreme Court is long overdue to get some of this stuff sorted out, because I don't want to see the next president have to go through everything that Donald Trump's going through, regardless of who they are. We need to have some type of order, and we need to hold Congress accountable. And ultimately, I keep saying it, but if I say it bears repeating. It's going to be up to us, the American people, to stay engaged, to educate ourselves, activate ourselves, and motivate others to do things. That's the real purpose. I think you and I agree with our show here, is to keep people fired up and help them to accomplish the responsibility of being citizens, really.
It really is. And if you go back on tariffs is something they've used since the beginning of trade between countries. I mean, it goes back into the BC era. And in this country, tariffs were used to fund the federal government. We never had an income tax. We never had these other taxes. It was always the tariffs supported our government. Tariffs didn't come in, or taxes didn't come in until I think it was right around the Civil War, where they needed to bring in some extra money. And tariffs are one of the main things that led to the Civil War. And it was between the northern states that were mainly industrial and the southern states that were agricultural. And tariffs have been used, and now here we're going again. And Trump, what he's doing, this is all to balance our trade deficits, to get them down to where we can have honest and open and fair trade with all nations. And let's throw in what George Washington said: entanglement with none. And if we can get back to that, our country will be a lot better off, and I think the world will be too.
Yeah, and I'm always thinking about Ben Franklin, a republic if you can keep it. Yep. And, of course, Thomas Jefferson famous in saying you can't be both ignorant and free because you want what never was and never will be. And I'm kind of paraphrasing that.
Well,
we got about
that goes into the Patriot Act. People want all this protection in the government to protect them, but it goes back to that quote of Jefferson's.
Yeah, and it goes back to the quote of Big Sid Martin: "We get the government we deserve." I mean, that's true, man. That is so true. It's unfortunately true. So we only got about 2 or 3 minutes left, but I wanted to touch on this because we've talked a lot about this Ukraine situation. I was going to play this video, where Trump basically said he doesn't understand what Putin's doing and he thinks he's getting kind of crazy. Where do you see this going? Because it looks like a total S show right now.
It is, and I think this was a misstep from Trump. I know we'll probably get some people disagreeing with that. But when he did that meeting with Zelensky and belittled him in front of the world, and when he said he was going to end this war day 1 or 2 when he got elected, when you put stuff like that out there, you lose credibility when it doesn't happen. And Putin saw weakness. He moved on that, pretended he was going to have a ceasefire, releasing 1,000 prisoners, but they're bombing Ukraine with drones and all that. And it's one of those things that just, we need to be better about this. Is that your kitty cat? We need to.
I got my grandkids running in here now.
We need to be stronger with what we do and not bluster, throughout, all this stuff. It just, we need to be real pointed on our foreign policy, and this is something you don't play with. So
yeah, sorry, I got distracted there a minute. I got this smile on my face because it's what it's all about. I got two of my grandkids. They're just toddlers.
Grandkids.
And they're running around right now. So but they picked the perfect time because we're about done here. Well, I hope you enjoyed the show. Go ahead, Ted.
Well, where this leads is, I think there's going to be a confrontation. It'll be pretty profound, I think. And let's hope it's short-lived.
Yeah, well, the scariest thing is that, it's like my little granddaughter keeps telling me, it's summer, Papa, because she wants to go swimming, but it's summer, and that's when the ground war really starts kicking in again. Really, so I think we've only got maybe days before it gets really bad over there. And I think I saw somewhere that the amount of weapons that the Ukrainians have that mainly we're furnishing is basically good for about 2 more months, and then they're out. So the next couple of weeks is going to be critical.
Those border countries are gearing up for this. Germany's gearing up for this. And when you have the border countries that had signed the no mines treaty, and they pulled out of that, and then they're mining their borders, those countries are preparing for war. And, let's hope that this Trump can do something and really get Putin to the table and end this nonsense. And, say your prayers. We'll see.
At least we don't have anybody asleep at the wheel this time, like
really,
like Biden. Well, I hope you've been.
That's why we have the problem we have, because they knew they could do that with Biden. Had Trump been in office, this never would have happened.
Yeah. Well, I used to tell people all the time back when I was one of the first people I remember saying, this guy Biden is just totally incoherent. I made the point, Ted, that would you literally let him take your kids to school? And I'm not saying all the hair smell. I'm saying literally drive them to school. I wouldn't have, no way in the world, Well, I hope you've enjoyed the show as much as we enjoyed bringing it to you. Please like what we're doing, share what we're doing, spread the word far and wide. Have yourself, Ted, you and your family, a great weekend, and we'll see you on Monday.
Take care, guys. Peace out.
Peace out.